YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm back today again with the Sunday slate for the Draftkings Call of Duty League slate. We're gonna talk about the picks. You know, we saw some crazy upsets like the LA Boston sweep yesterday that we saw 3-0. LA Thieves resurged back to, you know, their previous selves, and they beat Boston Breach 3-0. We're gonna be having 3 games today. We're going to be having London against Seattle Surge, London Royal Ravens against Seattle Surge. We're also going to be having Optic Texas against the LA Thieves, red hot LA Thieves, you can say. I guess one game is red hot, but who knows? Let's see if they can carry this momentum. And we're also going to be having Boston against Florida, which is going to be a pretty good match as well. I'm looking forward to all 3 of these matches, and I'm going to go over my favorite picks of who I think the value plays are going to be today for today's slate. Now, some players have hiked in price, so I do think there's some value in some of these underdogs, and I'm going to go over that with you guys. If you just found this channel and you like esports, you like betting, and you like betting on esports, and most importantly, if you like making money, feel free to subscribe, feel free to like, comment your opinions as well. A lot of people have been sharing in the comments, so you know, I'm appreciative of that, and let me know what you think on these matches, and I'd be glad to discuss them with you as well. Follow me on Twitter and Discord, and let's get into these first couple of matches. So for the first game of the day, we have the Seattle Surge against the London Royal Ravens. This is going to be a great match, and as you guys can see here by the odds, Seattle Surge is favored to win at -185. London Royal Ravens is at a +143, so they're the underdogs. This matchup is going to be a scrappy one. I really do like how both of these teams play. I know Afro on the London Royal Ravens side is my favorite pick automatically all the time, because he's the one who's always the cheapest and always has the highest upside on their team. I think right now he's sitting at $8,000, and you know, it was a price hike of $800 from the previous matchup that they lost to Toronto, but definitely London Royal Ravens has the ability to beat Seattle Surge. Now, as for me, I obviously think Seattle Surge is going to win. I think they might pull out a 3-0. I know it's crazy to say. The reason I say that is because I feel like ever since London Royal Ravens got Harry, their new sub, they haven't really been the same. They haven't really been playing the same. They haven't been looking as scary as they started looking at the beginning of the season when they had Gizmo on their squad. So that just leads me to believe they're gonna, you know, move a little bit lower in the standings. Actually, here I don't even see where the. Let's see. I think they are. They're not that low in the standings. You know, they're number 3. But it doesn't feel like they're number 3, the number 3 team, you know, in the league, right? So I feel like they're gonna dip a little bit, and I feel like Seattle Surge is gonna, you know, jump up a little bit, as long as Minnesota Rocker as well. So I do feel like, you know, Seattle Surge is going to win this matchup. If we look at London Royal Ravens record, they lost to Toronto 1-3. They lost to Boston 1-3. The only team they've beaten in this past major is Paris at 3-2, and that was a close one. And that says a lot about what type of team London is right now, and you know how they're feeling, right? And then previous to that, they got swept by the Thieves as well. And then the Pro-Am Classic, they were getting wrecked, which is, you know, understandable. But even in the Major 2 tournament, the only team they beat was Paris. So I actually didn't know that, and now that I'm looking back at it, it makes a lot of sense. As soon as they got Harry, they just dipped in quality, right? Now, I don't want to jinx it, but I do think Seattle Surge is going to win 3-0, and if it's not a 3-0, 3-1, right? But I just heavily favor Seattle to win this matchup. As you can see, Seattle is in good form right now. So far this major, they beat Florida 3-1. They swept the LA Thieves 3-0. They beat Paris and they lost a close one to Toronto. So I do have a lot more confidence in Seattle's surge. I feel like Seattle already got over that hump that every new upcoming team goes whenever they start a season and they're destroying, and then the middle of the season comes and they just dip in performance. I think they got over that hump, and I think they're starting to get their groove back and find their way up again and find that rhythm that they had at the beginning of the season. So I think Seattle Surge is going to win 3-0. My favorite picks here in the matchups, like I said, if you want to be contrarian, Afro is a good one at 8,000, but since I think they're going to lose, I don't think I'm going to pick them. In the Seattle Surge side, I say everybody's good. The value probably would be in Mac because he's 8,200, so that's a pretty decent price for him. 8,200, and even though he hasn't been the most consistent player, he's been really good for them, and he always has that upside. As of now, the highest he's gone is, I believe, 106 kills with 98 deaths, and that matchup he made 127 fantasy points. So he's really good, as well as Sib. Sib at 10,000 is really good. Sib always explodes. His standard is higher than the other players. So Sib and Mac, I believe, are the value plays here. Can't go wrong with Pred at 9,000 either. Pred got 135 fantasy points last matchup. He got 102 kills and 79 deaths. So that's another thing you got to think about players. Yes, they're good if they get a lot of kills, but they also have to, not have a lot of deaths, because then it cancels itself out. If you've noticed a player like Vivid on the Florida Mutineers, which I'm going to talk about soon, he gets a lot of kills mostly every game. He gets a lot of kills, but he gets a lot of deaths as well. So he doesn't really benefit from all those kills that he obtains. So it's important to have a player who gets a lot of kills consistently, but also doesn't give away his life so much. So with that being said, my picks: Afro, Mac, Sib, and I think this is going to be a 3-0 in Seattle Surge. With that being said, let's look up our next matchup: Boston versus Florida. So for our next matchup here in the day, we have the Florida Mutineers against the Boston Breach. This is going to be a very nice match. I really like this because the Boston Breach just came out of getting swept, so they got a lot of proof. They were throwing some excuses yesterday. I heard Method say that something with the servers was going on. So we're going to see if they have the same issue today. Boston is a good team. I trust them, but Florida Mutineers is also a very unpredictable team. They're the type of team who could lose to the worst and beat the best. So I'm really looking forward to seeing who comes out on top on this one. I'm going to be watching very closely. I do think, however, I'm going to point out that, before I say that, I want to point out the odds. Florida Mutineers is at a -130, and Boston Breach is at an even odd. So take note in that when we look at the prices, and why that might be a little off. If this is basically almost a coin toss, and the players' prices hiked up so much from yesterday. So as you'll notice here, Skies is 9,800. Yesterday, I believe he was way less than that. I might be wrong. It might have been the matchup that they were having yesterday against Seattle, against a team that is stronger. So Skies yesterday was 8,200, and today he's 9,800. So that's a hike of about $1,600. So I don't think he automatically becomes $1,600 more valuable today than he was yesterday, just because he's playing the Boston Breach. I mean, they might have lost to Seattle, and they might lose to these guys as well. So I don't think that Skies is a good value in my opinion. Now, if they 3-0 Boston Breach, he's gonna definitely be a key play. But just considering the fact that the price hikes, the price hike compared to the odds from Bovada, which, you know, I kind of trust them. I kind of trust them for Call of Duty odds. They seem to be fairly on point most of the time. Based on that, I just don't think that the price reflect the value that these players are going to bring to you. Even if they win 3-1 fashion, the price is pretty high. I do feel like I would take a chance maybe on somebody like Vivid. Like I was saying previously, Vivid is a player who gets a lot of kills, but his problem is that he gets a lot of deaths as well. So it really balances out, as you can see here. He got 83 kills yesterday against Seattle, but he got 98 deaths. The game previous to that with Minnesota, he got 86 kills, but he got 100 deaths. You know, so on and so forth. The previous game before that, he got 73 kills and 70 deaths. You know, 43 kills and 64 deaths, 79 and 79. So you see how he gets a lot of kills. He dies too much though. So I wish that Vivid didn't do that as much. I know that's probably his role. He probably gets in people's faces and, you know, just causes disruption. I've heard that that's their key play style, but I feel like Vivid is a good contrarian play if you do think, you know, Florida is going to win. I mean, not contrarian because they're favored to win, but Vivid at 7,200 might be a really good play if this team ends up getting a 3-0 or even a 3-1. He might have a really good stat sheet. Or maybe even a 3-2 because, you know, if you get a 3-2, he's going to have more chances of kills, but he's obviously probably going to have more deaths as well. So it just goes hand in hand. That's my favorite play on this side. For the Boston side, I really do feel like Capsido at 9,200 might be a decent play. You know, yeah, they've lost to Atlanta and Thieves these past couple of matches, but I do think they have what it takes to beat the Florida Mutineers. I do feel like Capsido has been in kind of a slump, though. He hasn't seen 100 fantasy points since he played Florida, you know, coincidentally, a couple months back. So, you know, we're gonna see how they stack up to, you know, the Mutineers right now. We're gonna see if they're in a bad slump or what's it called. But 9,200, I think he might be decent. Methods at 8,200 might be a little bit better of a play here. You know, he averages 100 fantasy points. Methods here, so Methods might be a good play. He hasn't been consistent either, too. Just how the whole team hasn't been really doing too much. If we go over here and we look at their stats, they got 3-0'd by LA Thieves. They got 3-0'd by Atlanta. So it's 2 back-to-back 3-0s. That's not good. So looking at that, I do feel like maybe Florida Mutineers might be in a good position here. They beat London, which wasn't saying much, right? Because we know that London hasn't really been doing really good here in Major 3. They lost in New York. And then previous to that, in the Major 2 tournament, they weren't doing all too hot either. I mean, they beat Florida once and they beat Gorillas, but ever since then, they haven't really shown too much. I do feel like I'm inclined to see Florida win. Something about it today tells me that even though the prices are too high, they might win because Boston Breach hasn't been really playing to their best behavior, you know. But you know, I said that about multiple teams the past couple of days, and they ended up getting swept. Like Thieves ended up sweeping Boston, you know. So it anything can happen really. But I do think that Methods and Capsido are the only two players I would roster here. Personally, I do think that if at the Florida Mutineers side, I do think Vivid is a good value, and obviously Awakening and Skies. I actually haven't looked at Dav Patty's stats here. Let's look at Dav Patty's price. Dav Patty is at 7,800. Dav Patty's kind of a quiet player. He doesn't really explode too much. He is rather consistent though. If you look at his game log, 89 fantasy points, 92, 83, 95, I mean, he seems to be fairly consistent with his kills as well, in that 50 to high 70s range. He stays in that time and time again. So Daft Patty might be a sleeper pick right here. I just say if you want to be real contrarian, you could go Daft Patty, Awakening, or you can make a combination of Vivid and Daft Patty. That's good too. If this ends up being a 3-0, which I don't think it's going to be a 3-0, but you never know. Boston just got 3-0 back to back, so we're gonna see how this goes. My predictions for this matchup are going to be 3-2 Florida Mutineers, and my favorite picks are Methods, Cap Seidel, and I would say Vivid and Daft Patty. So that's what I think about this matchup. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comments. Feel free to let me know if you're gonna watch it as well. And with that being said, let's move on to the last matchup of the day, which is gonna be the Optic Texas against the Los Angeles Thieves. So for our last matchup of the day, we have the Optic Texas LA Thieves facing off with each other. LA Thieves obviously surprisingly turned around a double game in a row, sweeping of themselves to a sweep of themselves. Boston 3-0'd. So I don't want to say they're looking good, right? Like it's only one match, and previous to that they hadn't really. I mean, previous to that they 3-0'd London, but they got. If you look at this stat right here, this is kind of crazy to me. Major 3 qualifiers. First match they play, they 3-0 London. Second match they play, they get 3-0'd by Minnesota. Third match they play, they get 3-0'd by Seattle. Fourth match they play, they 3-0 Boston. Right? So that's insane. So I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know if it's truly a server issue where whenever they play with bad servers or something, they lose. And then whenever they get good servers, they really, really win. Like, I don't know what's going on there. But all I know is that they beat Boston yesterday. They did good on that end, right? And I know that Optic obviously lost yesterday versus New York. It was a 3-1 matchup. It's just how it was. Previous to that, I believe Optic hadn't lost a single. No, they did. They lost in Major 2. But before that, Optic was just destroying teams. ATL 3-1, Florida 3-0, LAG 3-0. Lost to Florida, LAT, Minnesota. So LAT, the Thieves, might pose a little bit of a problem here for Optic, just in the sense that now, previous to this matchup that Thieves just played, they were feeling very down on themselves. They were getting just smoked, so they were just feeling very down on themselves. Talks about a roster change are brewing, so if they can beat Optic, that is going to increment their stock so much to the point where I don't think they're going to be thinking about roster changes anymore. They're just going to be focusing on doing what they do best right now. I know they just got a new coach or a new assistant coach, so maybe he brought something to the table they didn't have. I don't know how relevant he is to this whole thing, but let's just see if they can carry this on for another matchup before we get ahead of ourselves, right? Because it might have been a fluke, right? Who knows? But I am leaning towards the Optic winning a 3-2 matchup. LA Thieves is just like the Florida Mutineers in the sense that they lose to teams they shouldn't be losing, and they beat teams that they shouldn't be beating, right? So I do feel like this one might go to the wire, down to the wire. I do feel like there's good plays on both ends of the spectrum. I feel that all LA Thieves players are now, for the first time like ever, properly adequately priced, right? Like if you go down and you check up on the salaries here, if we go all the way down, we see Draza at 6,200, right? Draws at 6,200. He hasn't been the most consistent player ever, but at 6,200, even a game 5 would see him like probably get a good stat line and probably have a good return on his investment. Kenny as well at 6,600. Kenny at 6,600 is a really good, in my opinion. Yeah, if you look at his game log, he hasn't really done that well this season. But, you know, if they can keep this momentum going at 6,600, I feel like he's adequately priced. Octane at 7,000 is more like it. Octane this season hasn't really been performing too well either. The whole team hasn't been performing too well. But now I feel that these prices are more like, you know, tangible, more favorable for this squad, right? Envoy at 8,400 is more reasonable, right? Even though he's probably the highest scoring FPS wise player on their team. You know, he got 55 kills and 31 deaths. You know, Envoy is a really solid play. If anything, if you'd like to be contrarian, I would say Kenny and Envoy would probably be good plays if LA Thieves managed to, you know, squeak out a win or even draws them. You know, Scump at 7,400, respectable price. That's usually where he lives at. Scump's been on an absolute tear this season, so I say always Scump is a lock. Always, almost always. You know, Dashy at 8,600, more reasonable priced. You know, Dashy under 800. I do under 8,500 or not under $9,000 Dashy is usually a good like value proposition, especially because he always gets 100 fantasy points, almost always. Shotzi 9,400. That's usually where he's at. I mean, Shotzi always overperforms as well. You know, just the team has a performance in total, but at that price, 9,400, I think he's decent. And then you have Proloot, which I don't think Proloot should be at 10,200. I just feel like Draftkings thinks that every rookie who's been good for the first 2 games is gonna be like the next, you know, simp or something. So Proloot, I don't think should be here in at 10,000. He's a good player, but I think he's a little bit too expensive. So I would say that the value here lies within Dashy, Shotzi, Scump. Most importantly, Scump, because he's the cheapest one with the, you know, arguably one of the most 100 fantasy point game logs out of everybody in the league, which is ridiculous in my opinion. And then you have on the other side, I would say a player like Kenny and a player like Envoy, who would probably take the brunt of all the workload and have to outperform to make sure that this team would win. And in the case of a win, they would definitely be, you know, meeting that value, if not exceeding it, right? So I think that Optic Texas is going to win 3-2. That's my prediction. I do feel like this is going to be a great game. I mean, if you can see the lines here, Optic Texas is favored minus 230, and LA Thieves are at a plus 175. So, you know, Vegas agrees with me. Yes, I'm going to watch this match, and I'm going to probably get pissed if Optic loses. But, you know, it is what it is. If you guys like the content, if you guys want me to keep pumping out some more of this content, feel free to like, subscribe, you know, comment down below like you have been doing recently, and feel free to let me know how I can make the channel better. I'm trying to find a way to make it more efficient so I could upload stuff for Call of Duty, Halo, and Valorant and CSGO, but it's a lot of stuff, you know, so it takes some time to develop it. Rest assured, I'll be making this channel better and better every week, so you know we can have some good esports betting content out here on YouTube. So with that being said, feel free to like, subscribe, you know how it goes, and let me know what videos you want to see in the future if you have any specific recommendations, and I'll see you in the next one.